I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Edward Everett Hale. What you are looking at is an icosahedron. There is string which runs through the internals of this object. If you make one of these, you will see that it houses the dodecahedron, which some would call the Roman dodecahedron. I will discuss this in a short while. There is much to be discussed beforehand. It is not possible for me to give you all of the information in such a short space of time, and I will do my best to keep it as simple as possible. Please know this: the information which shall be provided covers many subject matters: art, music, the unfolding sequences of the universe itself, you as a divine creature, the frequency of life. And now, let's start at the beginning. Vortex mathematics is a very important part of the subject matter. I suggest you go and check it out for yourself. This object here is a tetrahedron. It is a four-sided object. From this moment forth, please consider that I will always note the vertices first, then the faces, then the edges, followed by the internal linears of said object. In the case of the tetrahedron, it is complete. Unless, of course, you want to look into advanced versions. Unfortunately, that will have to be for another video. For now, know this. The tetrahedron has 4 vertices, 4 faces, 6 edges. Again, in this form, in the base formula, it is complete. The next object is an octahedron. In mainstream thinking, this is not the next object in the sequence. However, as you will see, it unfolds with the 3 linears that go through the internal of the object. 3 pieces of white string. Let's do the maths. 6 vertices, 8 faces, 12 edges. 3 linears, of which all 3 go through the exact center of the object. In the case of this octahedron, I've made it with 1 green triangle and 1 yellow triangle. It also has 6 pink straws, which create 1 version of frequency. It is possible to make an octahedron using 4 triangles or 3 squares. As you can see, there's a difference between how this one has been made, the tetrahedron, as I have had to make 4 separate triangles, putting them together, creating double edges. There's a reason why I mention this. That will also be discussed mainly later. For now, please know that This is definitely the next object in the sequence. Moving on to what is commonly known as a cube. There was an artistic movement called Cubism. There's a reason why it came into existence. When you observe any of these objects, please remember that it is possible to close one eye and change the perspective of what you see. In the case of this object, we shall do the maths. 8 vertices, 6 faces, 12 edges, 16 linears, of which 4 go through the exact center. The other 12 cut across the square faces of the object. There is much I could say about this one shape. In the base formula, this is all that is available. I would recommend you make these yourself so that you can observe them and see the universal code. Next, we have the icosahedron. As previously stated, it houses a dodecahedron. Perhaps we should do the maths. There are 12 of these vertices, 20 faces, 30 edges, 36 linears, of which 6 go through the exact center of the object. The other 30 create 12 5-pointed stars, which also creates 12 pentagons, thus creating the dodecahedron, which is where the Roman dodecahedron would have been housed. Personally, I like to look at them as ancient shapes. The more you play around with these shapes, you may come to realize that what I am showing you here and now is not the be-all and end-all of everything that I do know. Next, we have a dodecahedron. For the purpose of this exercise, I'm using 2 separate objects to describe this one object. There's a reason for that. We shall remove this one for now, and we will just focus on this one. Again, I fully recommend you go and make these for yourself. As a small tip, I would also recommend, when making the dodecahedron, be aware that the length of the straws will need cutting down. Otherwise, it will collapse on itself. Trust me when I say I've made several of these, and after multiple attempts of them falling to pieces, I realized I needed to cut the length of the straws shorter. I prefer to use straws. I find it an excellent medium to explain these objects. Let's do the maths. There are 20 of these points, the vertices. There are 12 faces. There are 30 edges. there are also 160 linears, of which 10 go through the exact center of the object. On a side note, quantum physicists, you may want to make one of these, as it could perhaps help you to explain 10th dimensional string theory. More importantly, if you start looking at the shapes, some of which shall be presented in other videos, you may come to realize that I could easily explain 16th dimensional string theory. Just because it has string going through the inside, it's not a joke. I'm being serious. If there are only 10 going through the exact center, well, what about the other 150 linears? It would be obvious to say that if a dodecahedron can be found inside of an icosahedron, then you would be able to find an icosahedron inside of a dodecahedron. Inside of this object is different colored string. The white string goes through the exact center. The red string explains the icosahedron, and the blue string, with some burgundy because I could do that to explain something else. It's a long story. That explains shapes that go much, much beyond the dodecahedron. At this moment in time, in this object, there are only 100 linears being explained. The face linears have not been explained. There's a reason for that. I find it much easier to explain certain things using just the face linears from this object here. So we will set this there. As you can see, each face is made with a 5-pointed star. There are 12 of them. 12 5-pointed stars create the face linears of the dodecahedron. 60 in total. Because of how this object is made, if you find one triangle, and then note this point in the middle of said triangle, there are many things that you can relate this to in vortex mathematics. One of the things that I find very interesting about this shape, which is why I use this to explain on its own the face linears. There is the frequency that bounces. There is blatantly an eye. It also has two other eyes which sit inside of it. When you find this triangle, you will be able to find everything else that can be seen within this object. The face linears explain 5 cubes. To make that a little bit easier, if you look at this object here, you can see that there are red straws which explain 1 cube. 1 cube of 5. The green and blue straws explain, well, frequency. As you can see, I have a solid green there, but in this case, the 2 edges are of red. And again, you have your all-seeing eye. This is literally 124875 in the Vortex mathematics paperwork. There are many things that could be explained. I recommend you go and make these to discover them for yourself, or perhaps watch another video. I have shown you the 5 Platonic solids. I am now going to show you a different way of looking at these 5 objects, which is very important because I need to show you a 6th object. This tetrahedron is associated with fire. This octahedron is associated with air. This hexahedron, also known as a cube, is associated with earth. This, the icosahedron, is associated with water. And this, the dodecahedron, is associated with ether. All 5 Platonic solids in the order that they should be considered. The 6th object that I need to show you, in my opinion, is the most important of all shapes that I'm going to show you in this video. I have 3 versions of this object. Here are 2 of them. This one, I really like this one because it just shines 936. As you can see with this one, white string has been put through the internal of this object. So let's do the maths. There are 12 of these points, the vertices. There are 14 faces, of which 6 are square, 8 are triangles. This object is also known as a truncated cube or a hexaoctahedron. For those of you who know music theory, which I don't, I am showing you an object which was used to explain sound. Because when you make this object and you look at the internal linears, it explains the cycle of fifths. I'm not the only one who's saying this, but as far as I can tell, I am the only one who is discussing the discovery of the Roman dodecahedron, or as I said, ancient shapes, which our ancient ancestors would have known worldwide. This would have been a major determining factor in frequency. There are 24 edges. There are 42 linears, of which 6 go through the exact center of the object. 12 cut across the square faces, much like in the cube. The other 24 returns to the 933-966 sequence that you will find in Vortex mathematics. What you have seen so far is a very small amount of information that can be provided. I said I had 3 versions of this shape. As you can see in this one, I have done the internal linears in black string this time. This was actually made before this object. I happen to like this shape a lot. Although you can see it's also bent out of shape. Okay, my jokes are terrible. But there's a reason why I have not put the linears that go across the square faces. I will show you why. Now please bear in mind, this octahedron here, with its 3 linears that go through the internal of the object, and currently expressing a version of frequency. More versions of frequency will be explained in later videos. You are looking at sound. I will state here and now, if you can find air, then you can find sound. If you can find sound, then you can find multiple versions of air. As you can see, this object loves breaking down to an octahedron. I personally feel that it's very important to make this next point. Just because you cannot see it does not mean it's not there. You saw my hands hit together, but did you see the sound? Or would you like to pretend to yourself that you saw the sound because my hands hit together? The fact of the matter is, you can only hear the sound. It's amazing how I can take this air and I can put it inside of my lungs or even my stomach, and I can create sound. I cannot stress enough that I recommend you go and make these shapes for yourself so that you can discover the universal code. Do not in any way think that by watching this video, you will be able to know everything. As I've stated previously, it is not possible for me to give you all of the information in such a short space of time. More importantly, I am 100% adamant that when you make these shapes yourself, you will begin to notice things, especially the frequency of life, the universal code. Thus, I finish with, there are 5 Platonic solids. And even though there are many other shapes that I have made that I could explain to you, that are relevant and have great importance, what you are looking at now are 6 extremely important shapes to you as a divine creature. I thank you for your time. And I declare this as intellectual property. Do not attempt to patent this in any way whatsoever, as it is not possible to patent the universal code. More importantly, it is not possible to patent the frequency of life itself